my God.
I'll let it slide.
Hey, Kevork Almassian, great Syrian journalist from SyrianaAnalysis, is going to be joining us in moments to talk about, Trump going after peace. Really, I think wants this peace prize. And can he get it from Armenia and Azerbaijan? Or is it all one big Washington trap that, maybe we're being all fooled by what's actually going on here? We're going to talk about that.
Yes. But first, Clayton's going to tell you about our friends over at American Financing.
That's right. If you've been living on credit cards just to cover groceries, gas, and bills, those interest rates are brutal. I mean, over 25% in some instances. That's ridiculous. Why pay that to the banks when you could call our friends over at American Financing? They have mortgage rates in the 5% range. They are showing people every day how to keep more of their hard-earned money in their pocket and out of the hands of credit card companies. Right now, American Financing is helping homeowners save an average of $800 a month just by using their home equity to wipe out high-interest debt. With no upfront fees, no obligation, just a 10-minute phone call to a salary-based mortgage consultant. And here's the kicker. If you start today, you could delay up to 2 mortgage payments, putting even more cash in your hands right away. So don't wait. Give them a call today, 866-890-8434. That's 866-890-8434. Their NMLS number is 182334. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR rates in the 5s start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Again, call 866-890-8434 for details about credit costs and terms.
Well, peace has finally been inked between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but not everyone is ready to hand out Nobel Peace Prizes, even though the leaders of both nations met with President Trump last week and said, oh my gosh, so glad that you did this for us. We should perhaps, give President Trump a Nobel Peace Prize for the fact that we've done this. Watch.
Can I have a suggestion?
Yes.
So maybe we agree with Prime Minister Pashinyan to send a joint appeal to Nobel Committee to award President Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize because from the leaders of the countries which were at war for more than 3 decades, having this historic signature here, it really means a lot. This is tangible result of President Trump's leadership, and no one could have achieved that. So who, if not President Trump, deserves the Nobel?
Okay. Well, are those leaders really done with this war? Do they mean it? Or are the underlying causes still persistent? Kevork Almassian is the host of SyrianaAnalysis. He says not so fast. He says this is a Band-Aid slapped onto a deeply broken arrangement, a temporary patch on a wound that just keeps reopening. So thank you, Kevork, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a really pleasure, Natalie.
Okay, you did a beautiful deep dive of this in your on SyrianaAnalysis, and I watched it. So can you sort of explain the history of the conflict briefly and what this deal means and why now we have suddenly this Trump route for prosperity? Like now we have land there? What the heck?
So there are deep grievances between the Armenians, the Azeris, and the Turks because of the Armenian genocide. But after the end of the First World War, Stalin has given a piece of land called Karabakh to Azerbaijan when Azerbaijan was a newly formed Azeri Socialist Republic back then. And this enclave was inhabited by Armenians, and it stayed under the occupation of Azerbaijan until 1993, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Armenians rose and they fought for their liberation, and they hold a referendum there in order to gain their independence. So they have gained an independent enclave called the Artsakh Republic until, of course, 2018. Now, what happened? I want to give a little bit of historical context very fast. After the independence of Armenia, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Yerevan stayed a strategic ally of Moscow until 2018, when Armenia witnessed a color revolution, and this color revolution brought Nikol Pashinyan, the current leader of Armenia, into power. And many people in Armenia and abroad, especially in the diaspora, they call him the executive director of the globalists. He came through the funding and the support of the usual suspects, as the USAID, the NED, and also the Soros organizations. Now, 2 years into his leadership, Pashinyan capitulated to Azerbaijan, and signed a document which recognized Nagorno-Karabakh as an Azeri territory. And this led into the withdrawal of the Russian peacekeeping forces from Nagorno-Karabakh, which means in the southern Caucasus, and also the ethnic cleansing of 120,000 Armenians from this enclave, the independent enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. However, the planners, let's say, in the Pashinyan government, in the EU, in the United States, they saw these steps as necessary steps in order to establish this corridor that we are nowadays questioning or addressing in today's show. So what is this?
Can we bring up that map? This is, now we're calling it the TRIP, right? The Trump route for international peace and prosperity. This is what you're talking about, right?
Exactly. So Pashinyan agreed to lease 40% deep inside Armenian territories to the United States for 99 years, which means the Americans will own this territory for 99 years, and they will establish a route coming from Azerbaijan, passing through Armenia and going all the way to the exclave of Nakhichevan, which belongs to Azerbaijan, to Turkey, and then to some of the EU countries. So what do these powers gain from this? Azerbaijan gains a lot because they now can have an access to their exclave Nakhichevan, but also they will establish trade and energy routes to the EU, because we remember the EU countries do not want to deal with Russia. They don't want to buy gas from Russia. So they are diversifying their energy resources, one of which is going to be Azerbaijan. That's why they need this route to buy more energy resources from Azerbaijan. Now, Turkey gains also a lot from this, because this gives Turkey a geopolitical connectivity with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan and Turkey consider themselves one people in two nations, and this will give also Turkey access into the Caspian Sea, and from the Caspian Sea it will have access and projection of power over Central Asia. And this is a very important issue, because it seems that the planners in NATO, they want to use this route in order to project NATO hegemonic power over Central Asian countries or pan-Turkic countries in the next years, especially in the next decade. And this means that NATO will have influence over Central Asia also through these trade routes, something that would definitely alarm Russia in this case. So what has Armenia gained from this? This is also an important question, because Armenia is a very important signature of this deal, right? So Armenia gained promises from the EU and the United States that one day, hopefully, Armenia will join the European Union. Armenia gained promises from the United States for security guarantees that they will protect the southern part of Armenia. But this also means that Armenia has to withdraw from the CSTO, the Russian-led security alliance in this region. And they will gain some millions of dollars from the customs service. However, what they are going to lose is a lot, because Armenia has now officially capitulated Nagorno-Karabakh, according to this deal, to Azerbaijan, which means Armenia has accepted not only its defeat, but also accepted that the people who were ethnically cleansed from this enclave and were forced to live into Armenia proper, they no longer have the right to return to their homes and villages and to their farms. And this has been signed by Nikol Pashinyan. What Armenia also lost from this is that it has alarmed major powers in the region, one of which is Iran, and the other one is Russia. And Russia and Iran are active players there, and you don't want to antagonize them. You can be friends with everyone, but you don't want to become a polarizing power in the region, just like Ukraine did, for example, and this led into a huge mayhem in Ukraine, right? So Iranians are the most alarmed of this, because they see that the United States is coming on their northern borders, basically, for 99 years, and they're going to have a foothold.
Red line, can you just, one more time, does this mean American troops present there? What will be there? Because if it's ours as Americans, we'll have some presence there, right?
So private contractors are going to protect this route, which means, of course, U.S. Special Forces. And this means through time that if any, let's say, security challenge happens in that region, the U.S. will say that this is our vital interest and there is an attack or a threat against our national security and we are on a defense mode, and they will install military bases. This is just the beginning for the U.S. to have a foothold in the Southern Caucasus in order to choke Iran and also have an influence in the Southern Caucasus. In my opinion, Iran, in the past, especially after October 7, they have lost a lot in the Middle East, and now they're losing in the Southern Caucasus, because what the Americans are doing, and the Israelis as well, I mean, the planners there, they're coming slowly but surely on the chessboard in order to encircle Iran from all sides. They found that Iran is too powerful now militarily to defeat and to, let's say, cause a regime change there. Therefore, they're going to strangle Iran from all sides. One of the ways they're going to do it is to change the trade routes in the northern part of Iran, which Iran benefited a lot in its trade. Now all these trade routes will change, which means Iran will not only lose from the sanctions, but also will lose from its normal trade relationship in the region and abroad. And secondly, the Israelis and the Americans, what they're doing, as you remember, yesterday, the Jolani's foreign minister met with the Israeli officials in Paris, and the Israelis asked the Jolani regime to allow Israel to open a humanitarian corridor between the Golan Heights to the Druze city of Sweda. And by doing so, they want to open what is called the David's Corridor. David's Corridor extends from the Golan Heights to Sweda governorate, to Al Tanf border crossing, where the American forces are stationed on the intersection of the Iraqi, Jordanian, and Syrian borders, and all the way to the eastern shore of the Euphrates, where the US forces are stationed and protecting the Syrian oil. And by doing so, they will have geopolitical strength, and they will have the opportunity to project their geopolitical might into the southern part of Iraq, in Al-Anbar, where it is called the human fuel of the axis of resistance in the region. So what they're doing is they're coming from the Southern Caucasus and they're coming from the Middle East and trying to encircle and choke Iran from all sides. But the government in Iran, now led by the so-called reformers, Pezeshkian and the rest, they want to try diplomacy with Armenia. So Pezeshkian was in Armenia yesterday, and this is a good start. Of course, Iranians are worried and they want to negotiate and see how can they achieve their interests, right, in the region. But in my humble opinion, this is not an Armenian project. This is an American-Israeli project in the region, and sooner or later the Americans will take one more step and come closer and closer to Iran, and the Iranians will realize that the diplomatic approach that they have picked at the current moment is going to be a liability for them, because the other side is not genuine for striking a deal with Iran. They want a behavior change from Iran, and this means regime change. If a behavior change means that Iran will change its geopolitical posture in the region, this is a soft coup already. So Iranians are in a dire situation, in my opinion. They have to calculate well. They don't want to go into war against Azerbaijan and Armenia in this case, but at the same time, they have to be very, very worried, in my opinion, and wary about the presence of US contractors there, just like it happened in Nagorno-Karabakh, where the Israelis built smart cities, basically, in the territories that they recently occupied, the Azeris occupied. So the Israelis came and they have built smart cities. We don't know what are these smart cities about and what are their function, but surprise, surprise, coincidentally, the helicopter of Ibrahim Raisi, the former president of Iran, fell just 200 kilometers away from one of these smart cities there. So this is going to be, in my opinion, a presence for these forces to wage cyber operations, intelligence operations also inside Iranian territories.
So for the last several years, the U.S. has withheld military funding to Azerbaijan, but now after signing this peace agreement, all of a sudden, take a look. Oh, here's some weapons to Azerbaijan. Do we have that screen from the Federal Register? Yeah. So if we go back to the map and we see, okay, not only is the red American presence, but Azerbaijan will be armed by the United States. We can see why Iran would be uncomfortable with that. But look at Russia right there. How do they feel about this?
Natalie, there is something very important. The U.S. successive administrations didn't send weapons to Azerbaijan, but this is an ingenuine approach, because what they did, they sent weapons to Israel, and Israel sent it to Azerbaijan. 60% of Azeri weapons come from Israel. And even the Israeli press, they acknowledge that most of the weapons that Azerbaijan used against the Armenians to occupy Karabakh a few years ago were Israeli weapons, and naturally those were American weapons bought by the Israelis. So in this case, I think the Americans had an invested interest in this from the beginning. So they did it indirectly through Israel, and Israel has opened an air bridge between Baku and Tel Aviv, and they sent them tons of weapons non-stop in the past years to the tune of I think $8 to $10 billion. So in this case, I think that the Israelis also see Azerbaijan as an advanced satellite state for them to wage not psychological intelligence operations inside Azerbaijan. And one of the Mossad operatives said, according to one of the WikiLeaks documents, that in Azerbaijan they feel themselves home. There are no restrictions on constraints for the Mossad operatives inside Azerbaijan, and they feel this is a fertile ground for them to plan for offensive operations inside Iran. And this was clear a few weeks ago when Israel attacked Iran. Some of these drones came from Azerbaijan, and some of the planning of this offensive was done inside Azerbaijan. So I think now we have an alliance of countries, not only in Central Asia, but also in the Middle East. And this alliance of countries give the US and Israel a dominant status in the region. It's quite clear that the current US administration has won in the Middle East after October 7. And now they are projecting this strength on Central Asia, also using the opportunity that Russia is busy with the Ukraine war by, remember what they did, the regime change in Syria and kicking most of the Russian influence from Syria. And now they're coming into Central Asia. As long as Russia is involved in this existential conflict in Ukraine, the US planners will use this opportunity to come closer and closer on the chessboard against Russia.
Well, I mean, when you understand the way that you have just laid this out, this doesn't seem like a peace deal at all. This seems like an antagonistic move. So thank you for bringing this. And again, he's just explained to us in about 15 minutes what he took an hour to explain. And I listened to you while I was walking my dog and my jaw hit the floor.
Thank you so much.
Why are we... We should not high five over this. It's not a time to high five. And as you say, if later it does end up to be something peaceful, we will high five and we will eat these words. But right now, it's a little bit
celebrate.
Scary.
I will celebrate if this turns into peace agreement. But we have major players in the region. You can't really sideline them. If they included Iran and Russia into this deal, this would have been a perfect formula for peace and lasting peace in the region. But sidelining them from such an important deal, meanwhile, they are regional and very important players in the region. I think this would alarm them. And now they will resort into, in my opinion, a different approach against Armenia. And Armenia is a small country, 3 million people. Why would they play a polarizing role? Ukraine was a huge country, and when they became a pawn, what happened to Ukraine? It has been destroyed, right? So as an ethnic Armenian, I don't want to see my motherhood to be destroyed or being used in this geopolitical conflict. That's why I bring these critical points, just to wake up people and open their eyes, because not everything is a pushy and colorful and balloons, as they try to portray in the press.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you so much. If you're not already following Kevork, you should do that on X and his YouTube show, SyrianaAnalysis. Thank you for staying up late to tell us this.
Thank you so much, dear.
All right.
Thanks, Kevork. Always great to see him.
Yeah, amazing analysis. All right, coming up.